Dr. Shimai would talk about, and thanks for having me. I've got some slides, but really interrupt, ask a question, don't let me get away with just saying anything I want up here. But what I'm going to try to do is talk about the situation the newspaper industry is in today, and then talk about what we're doing at the AJC as an example of trying to respond to the way of the media world today. So this is a simple, kind of a simple chart, of course, and provided by the Newspaper Association of America, and it's newspaper, the industry's revenue over about the past 60-some years. So what you can see is that back in about, I think that's about 2004, 5, 6, 8 maybe, it was a $50 billion industry. And in 2012, there was a $25 billion industry. So it's half as large in terms of revenue. And that is the defining statistic for newspapers, because as the internet came on beginning in 2000, advertisers who fundamentally support newspapers had all kinds of alternatives. And so suddenly newspapers are faced with the prospect of an industry that some people used to say was like printing money. Suddenly in a ton of competition with all kinds of alternatives for advertising and a intense pressure in terms of its operational necessities. So, I don't know, anybody have any questions about that? Okay. So here's the other sort of simple industry slide. So think about this for a second. Newspapers are actually a massive manufacturing operation in print. Even the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, we print millions of newspapers, discrete physical products, every week, and we deliver those products to individual addresses at a cost. I mean, you can subscribe to the AJC for a year for, let's see, less than $5 a week. So think about what we're charging you to bring that to your house, and think about what other people who do that work. And there are very few people who do that kind of work. So the post office, right? A letter is now 49 cents. We know how the post office is doing, right? And they take a day off. We don't. Then you look at someone like FedEx, and we can argue about what FedEx and UPS charge. I mean, but that's kind of a ballpark figure. Okay, so you can get the newspaper brought to your house every day of the week for less than, if you want to negotiate with us, a gallon of gas. Think about that for a second. And I can tell you that if we raise that price $1 a week, people will say, I mean, my email will explode over that. So when you look at these two situations, the revenue situation and the idea of delivery, you see that that is in terms of the physical printed newspaper, that is the challenge that we have right now. So this also helps define the challenge. The reason newspapers could bring the newspaper to your house so cheaply was because delivery was fundamentally a loss leader. We were getting so much money in advertising that it was worth bringing you the newspaper at a loss. So one of the things that AJC did historically, and some of you may know this, is we actually would deliver the paper, or at least bring it to places in every county in Georgia, North Florida, parts of Alabama, parts of Tennessee, and the Carolinas. Well, guess what? We would bring a paper to Valdosta, and it would cost us $5 to take it there on Sunday, and we'd charge you $2. So think about that for a second. How long do you think that model works out for you if you are spending more to manufacture and deliver something than you're charging for? I know this is an MBA class, so I'm guessing that you pretty quickly realize that's a losing proposition. And that's really the situation that we're in. So where newspapers are headed and where we're headed, if we are to survive, is a model that's more like this, where 80% of our revenue comes from subscription. So what does that mean? That means marginal subscribers, people who don't want to pay for news, or will only pay a certain amount for news over time, probably are not going to be our customers. And we will be a different kind of product rather than a large mass medium monopoly as we enjoyed for all those years in that one chart that I showed you. So any questions about that?
Is that why the content paper content is like fitness?
Yeah. In fact, oddly, I hear that a lot because the paper is less thick, right? But we actually devote more of the larger percentage of our space to news than ever. But when you think about most of those pages in that thickness that have gone away is really advertising. So the best example of that, the easiest way to sort of capture that is roll back 15 years. If you were looking for a job or you were looking to hire someone, what did you do? You bought a help wanted ad or checked the ads in the paper. That was a total monopoly for us. And it was a very effective way to hire people and to look for jobs. And guess what we did? It's the highest priced advertising, and for us, our highest margin business. And that business has mostly gone away. It's completely gone out of print. We do a lot of it online actually still, but you can see like with Monster, and we're actually a partner of Monster because we reach so many people online. We partner with Monster, that kind of stuff. So you would pick up the Sunday paper in a place like Atlanta, there would be 2 whole 24-page sections of help wanted ads. So now we don't have that. But the amount of news in other, it's been more stable. Does that make sense? But it's a perception problem. Yeah.
You have this incredibly complex distribution system. Have you guys ever thought about almost selling that out to other corporations like Amazon that delivers all the time? You've got the foundation to deliver addresses all over the state.
Man, that is a brilliant idea. We did it 2 years ago. Well, here's what happened. Here's what happened to us. It's a little bit more complicated than that, but hey, we're looking for good contractors if you want to start a business. The 8AC was actually the last large metro newspaper to have carriers who were employees. You know what I mean? So what was happening to us, we changed it to a contracted system where we contracted out. Well, what was happening is you would have this carrier force of, I think it was 4,000 or 5,000 people. And you were paying them as employees, and they were working for a few hours in the morning, but you still had, and most newspapers had quit doing that, because now your typical carrier, of course, is an adult, because it's a morning job, and they usually have another job, to go to. Atlanta is a difficult delivery market, though, compared to some others, because it's so spread out, traffic is bad, if you get even a little rain, it's a disaster, snow, forget about it, right? And we also, back to that pricing thing, historically, the HAC is really inexpensive. For example, I'm told, I don't know this for a fact, the Boston Globe costs twice as much to subscribe to as the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. And there are some historic reasons for it. Part of it, I think, is the Atlanta mentality. So many people are not from here that they don't necessarily have a huge emotional attachment to the newspaper, where if you go to northern cities, someone's grandfather was in the paper the first time they scored a touchdown, and then their father was in the paper the first time they scored a basket, and then, so families have connections, where if you haven't lived here, it's just the newspaper, and so you make a judgment based on different criteria, and that's a particular challenge in this market. So. Okay, let's get to the... Okay, so, what are we doing? Now, I can tell you that one of the fun things about the business, and I've been in it for 30 years now, is that it's much less of a everybody doing the same thing business than it used to be. In other words, people are really trying to figure out, trying things, how do we succeed in this business, because it matters now. So I'm going to talk a little bit about what we've done at the AJC, since we're being recorded, I guess these aren't trade secrets anymore, but, and some of you who are readers, I hope that you've seen this stuff, and if you aren't, I hope that some of this convinces you to read it, because it didn't really matter that much. But now in this competitive media environment, we have done a ton of research, and we've actually learned a lot in Cox from our television and radio colleagues who are very well-researched media entities, and a lot of what they do, particularly on television, is done for very specific reasons. So what we came up with, and television has a version of this too, is they will tell you reasons to watch television news. You know, our newsrooms in Cox Television States know this, so we came up with our reasons to read. So when you talk to readers of the newspaper, and we do our research with readers, which we can talk a little bit about because I sometimes get challenged on why are you doing research with readers, and there's a reason to do that. This is why they read the paper. These are the things we have to address with them and talk about. And so there are some important marketing messages in there, as you might imagine, and it has powerful implications for our operation. And as we have faced financial reality and less space for news and other things, it has forced us to prioritize. In other words, what do people want in the paper? When you're in a day when the money's flowing in, you have all the space you want, all the resources you need, you try to be all things to all people. And I think one of the big things that's changing is newspapers won't be that anymore. They'll be a different kind of product. And I think we're still figuring that out, but I have some pretty strong ideas about how that will end up. So, questions about that? Okay. So as we looked at those reasons to read, this is really how we've interpreted it for the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. And so, again, trying to stay focused on things that will work for us, that our readers want, that matter, that really touch them. And that can be there can be a difference between that and perhaps what someone was trained to do or likes to do or traditionally did, or what certain newspapers sometimes came to be known for. As an example of, we do similar research at our other newspapers, including our paper in West Palm Beach, Florida. And that paper was known for many, many years as one of the best newspapers for photography. They always had a very big and really good photography staff. And they would run very large pictures and all that. Guess what? Not on the list. That's very tough news for that staff. On that. That, in fact, photographs, readers, man, their judgments are swift and severe, let me tell you, especially when they call me. But they judge the photograph size based on its news value. It's that simple. They don't like big, pretty pictures in their newspaper. Even though, I mean, some of you may be either amateur photographers, no photographers, it's a really big accomplishment to take this beautiful photograph, and it needs to be big so people can see it and all that. Readers judge it completely on its news values. They don't care if it's pretty. They want to know if it's got information. And that's, the difference between, I think, photojournalism of today versus maybe a few years ago. So one of the other things we do, and a lot of our research is focused on the front page for obvious reasons. That is our most, that's basically our front door, it's our face, it's our marketing vehicle, whatever you want to talk about it, but it's the most important thing we do, no matter how you slice it. And so these are the topics people want on the front page. I've been at the AJC for 3 years, and this list has not changed. And we ask readers about this every 6 weeks or so. It doesn't change. Will the economy change if the economy improves? I don't know. But these things, you'll notice some things that aren't on the front page that the AJC used to do. Sports is not there. Even when Georgia State's winning streak in basketball just keeps going, it's still not a front page story. Now, what we find out from our research is that when a sports story reaches a certain level of community interest, then it becomes so. You remember 2 baseball seasons ago when the Braves had that one-game playoff, and there's a weird infield fly rule call, and people start throwing stuff on the field,